Namaskar, this is Akhilesh Bhargava. Welcome to Tit-Bits on Business and Finance with me. With yet another inevitable extension of income tax payment and filing deadlines, the fact is that the income tax portal and website continues to be in a total mess and it may not be able to meet the extended deadline of 15th September, which has now been given by the Finance Minister to the Infosys CEO with directions to get rid of all the bugs, all the glitches, all the technical failures and shortcomings in the new portal. Looking to the huge number of deficiencies in the portal, it looks unlikely that Infosys will get it all set and rectified by the new deadline of 15th September, even though Infosys says that this project is a top priority for the company with a team of 750 engineers working on it, directly supervised by its CEO himself, if Infosys is to be believed. While the income tax site is not available and accessible and has not been functional at present, it has actually been virtually so ever since it was launched on 7th June. And even when at a time when it was a bit operational, there were many challenges faced by the income tax department as well as by the taxpayers in its operation. And those included errors, technical glitches, difficulties in login and accessing the portal, slow loading of data, inability to upload digital signatures, difficulties in filing returns, appeals and compliances, inability to upload tax forms for international remittances, disappearance of data related to past returns, outstanding demands, etc. The portal was certainly in a mess. Sheer routine accessibility to the tax portal was so difficult that the entire functioning of the income tax department was impaired, whether in the matter of filing and processing of returns, refunds, appeals, assessments, outstanding demands, etc. After its initial gestation period, the earlier portal of the income tax department was actually functioning well till the income tax department decided to build a new one that it said would process income tax returns in a single day as against the present average processing time of 63 days, which the department said would in turn expedite the issuance of tax refunds also. The new portal, on the surface of it, was meant to make life easier for the taxpayer, but in reality, it is very likely we think that its primary purpose was a bit different. It was perhaps to enable the income tax department to detect tax evasion on a real-time basis, and that's when complications in development of a new portal would have set in. That objective, which is catching tax evasion on a real-time basis, would have certainly made the development of a new portal far more complex and far more complicated. That perhaps explained the delay. It was in January 2019 that Infosys was thus awarded a rupees 4,242 crore contract to build within 18 months a new portal for the income tax department, with an additional 3 months being given for its testing and acceptance. The new portal of the income tax department should have been thus ready and commissioned actually by 30th September 2020. It may be that due to the COVID disruptions and of course due to poor execution of the job, as is now very apparent, that the tax portal was finally launched on 7th of June this year, only to prove to be a non-starter and a huge embarrassment for the government. The new portal was wholly non-functional from day one, which only made compliance and administration much more difficult instead of easing it, which is what the department has said was its purpose. It brought the entire income tax administration to a standstill, and what was supposed to make life easier for the taxpayer did the very opposite for him, which is it increased its harassment and uncertainty. For example, those who had managed to file returns in the earlier part were surprisingly charged delayed filing interest, even though the deadlines for filing had been extended and no such interest could be levied on the taxpayer by the portal. This was just a small example of the kind of uncertainty and harassment that the taxpayers were facing when the new portal got in. It put on hold all routine tax proceedings for the taxpayer as well as for the taxman. It has been since June that Infosys has been struggling to rectify the portal but has not managed to set things right, even though it keeps reassuring the nation of its commitment to do so. This finally led to the Infosys CEO being summoned by the finance minister herself a couple of weeks ago and being given a deadline of 15th September to ensure that the new portal is up and running such that tax administration comes back to its normal times. Tax experts have been very critical of the way the project of the new portal has been handled by the Income Tax Department and by the Government of India. One expert remarked that a tax portal is a serious one and is not some frivolous social media website. He said very pertinently that it creates financial and penal obligations on default, and thus the tax portal needs to be robust and dependable and completely accurate at all times. He demanded that tax experts who know the complexity of the law should have been involved in this new portal development instead of leaving it only to Infosys and others to handle. Many other experts remarked that looking to the kind of challenges and difficulties being faced, it is better that the old portal is restored till a new one is developed and it undergoes rigorous testing before it is accepted and put into play. The larger issues that arise out of this massive fiasco related to the development and institution of a new tax portal are many. The first larger issue as we see it: on what basis was such a critical project awarded to Infosys, which had earlier goofed up and messed up with major flaws and shortcomings in the portals of GST and the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, which had been awarded it to it for development? How was the company with a poor track record in such project execution awarded such a critical national project in the first place is the first issue that comes. The second, while Infosys is certainly to blame for the mess, the Babus too are to be blamed and cannot be allowed to go scot-free. Those Babus who cleared the user acceptance test and accepted an unfinished portal and put it into operation certainly must be questioned. How did they accept a non-starter of a portal and put it into operation and bring the entire functioning of the tax administration in the country to a standstill? Some others, in fact, say that they must be questioned for the very reasons why was a new portal commissioned when the old one was good enough and could have been rectified. The next issue that comes is, why were tax experts and tax portal users not involved in the execution of the project on an end-to-end basis? If that had been done, flaws could have been identified and rectified midway, instead of doing so after the launch of the tax portal for public and departmental use and finding that it is not working properly. Why was the old portal simply discarded, particularly when, after a few years of usage and rectification, it had become fairly robust and reliable, is the next issue that comes to us. And finally, if at all the portal needed to be upgraded, then why not amend, modify and upgrade the existing one itself rather than discard the old one and launch an altogether new one? Where was the need to do that? It would have prevented this disaster and it would also have saved a good amount of public funds, in our opinion. If Infosys is to be blamed for this huge mess, then so should be the government. Putting the blame on Infosys is a mere face saver for the Babus and a very convenient way for them to avoid their own responsibility and accountability, right from the decision to award such a project to an acceptance of a failed product. Yet another matter where the government needs a face saver, according to us, is related to the ambitious Faceless scheme of assessment launched by the tax department for reasons, it says, to reduce corruption by eliminating any physical interface between the taxpayer and the tax officials. The Faceless scheme says that if there is no personal interaction between the taxpayer and the tax official, then corruption will certainly come down substantially. This much tom-tom faceless scheme of the Income Tax Department is also facing very obvious problems. A faceless scheme, in our opinion, can do no justice to a taxpayer or to the tax department, where the cases are large, where they are complicated, or where they involve specialized sections of the law, as in the case of international taxation and transfer pricing. Those are complicated matters and they need a personal interface in explaining and understanding. A physical personal interaction is a must in large and complicated cases in particular, so that the complicated tax issues are better explained and better understood between the taxpayer and the tax officials in order to avoid the passing of any orders which are baseless and meaningless and get turned off in appeals. A report now says that an option of a personal hearing is in the pipeline for big taxpayers in particular, with incomes exceeding 200 crores a year. If that gets started, then perhaps even for specialized tax issues like transfer pricing, etc., irrespective of the amount involved, there will be such an option to the taxpayer to be able to explain its case better and avoid baseless tax demands, which is often the case. Why was this not thought of earlier at the time of launch of the Faceless scheme itself? It is perhaps such hurried and poorly discussed legislations and projects which have resulted in a fiasco that the government now looks out for a face-saving excuse instead of simply accepting that it had goofed up, which is very apparent from the new portal and Infosys execution. Faceless appeals and assessments too is heading in that direction, we think, where the government will need to blame someone else for an ill-prepared decision that it took. This is Akhilesh Bhargava signing off till we meet again. Namaskar.